The last thing my son Dylan said before slamming my own front door in my face was, "You're dead weight, old man." He threw a garbage bag at me in the freezing Portland rain. My tools, my wood, my dignity. I was 73 with $12 in my pocket and nowhere to go. But my wife Catherine had been smarter than all of us. What she hid inside a hollow piece of oak in that bag was $800,000 and the weapon that destroyed my son's entire empire. Welcome to the story. If this kind of family story matters to you, please like, subscribe, and share where you are watching from. Before we continue, please note that parts of this story include dramatized elements. Any similarity to real names or events is coincidental, while the core message is completely real. My name is Frank Morrison, but the people who know me call me Frankie. I am 73 years old, and I have lived in the Sellwood neighborhood of Portland, Oregon, for nearly 40 years. I built furniture, I built houses, and I built a life with my hands. Good hands, steady hands, the kind that could shape a piece of raw oak into something that would last 100 years. But standing on my own porch that February night with the rain turning to ice on my shoulders, those hands were shaking like leaves in a storm. It started 10 minutes earlier. I was in my workshop behind the house sanding a cabinet door for Mrs. Patterson 2 streets over. The radio was playing old country, and the space heater glowed orange in the corner. Then the front door banged open. Heavy footsteps on the hardwood floors I had installed myself in 1988. I wiped the sawdust from my hands and walked inside. Dylan was standing in my living room. My son, 40 years old, 6'2", wearing a black overcoat that cost more than my truck payment. Behind him stood a man I had never seen before. Big, Slavic features, arms folded across a chest built like a concrete wall. He filled the doorway, like a slab of granite. Dylan did not greet me. He looked at me the way you look at a broken chair you are about to toss on the curb. He pulled a folder from his coat and threw it onto my coffee table. The same coffee table I had built for Catherine from reclaimed barnwood 30 years ago. Papers spilled out. I saw transfer of deed and irrevocable and effective immediately. "The house is being sold," Dylan said flatly. "Buyer comes Friday. You need to be gone tonight." Tonight. I searched his face for the boy who used to hand me nails one by one while I built bookshelves. The boy I taught to ride a bike on this very street. There was nothing there, just cold calculation. "Dylan," I said, my voice cracking. "This is my home. I built this house. Your mother and I. Mom is dead. Sharp as a chisel. 2.5 years dead. And this house is in my name. You signed it over. Remember? I remembered signing papers 18 months ago. Trust management, he had called it. Tax shelters. Protection for the estate. I trusted him. He was my son. I signed management papers, I stammered. Not the deed. I never. Read the fine print next time, old man. He nodded toward the big man. Victor, help my father find the door. The man moved toward me. Not fast. Just inevitable. Like a wall closing in. I stepped back into the hallway, then onto the porch, and the February cold hit me like 1,000 needles. Dylan appeared in the doorway, holding a black trash bag stuffed full and heavy. Through a rip near the bottom, I could see Catherine's flannel sleeve poking out. He had packed my dead wife's things into a garbage bag. Take your junk, he said. And threw it. The bag hit me in the chest. The weight knocked me backward. My heel caught the porch step and I went down hard. My knees cracked against wet concrete. Rain soaked through my shirt instantly, running down my spine like ice water poured from a bucket. I looked up. Dylan stood backlit in the doorway, warm light behind him, his face in shadow. Victor loomed at his shoulder. My son looked down at me kneeling in the rain, and there was nothing in his eyes. No guilt. No hesitation. Nothing human. You are dead weight, Dad. You have been dead weight since Mom died. Do not come back. Do not call. Just disappear. The door slammed. The deadbolt clicked. The porch light went dark. I knelt on the concrete, clutching the trash bag to my chest. Across the street, a curtain twitched. Old Mr. Hendricks, my neighbor for 22 years. The curtain fell back. His light went out. I was alone. I stayed on my knees long enough for the rain to soak through to my bones, long enough for my fingers to go numb on the wet plastic. But somewhere in that darkness, I heard Catherine's voice. Not a ghost, just a memory so sharp it cut through the cold. He will come for the house, Frankie. I can feel it. Promise me, you will not let him take everything. I had broken that promise. I had trusted the wrong person. I had failed her. I forced myself up. My knees screamed. The bag was heavy in my arms, heavier than old clothes should be. But I was too numb to think about that. I walked down the driveway past the cedar mailbox I had built, past the Japanese maple Catherine planted the year we moved in. The sleet stung my face like tiny razors. I reached the sidewalk and turned east toward 82nd Avenue. I did not know where I was going. I just knew I could not stay on my knees in front of my own house. Behind me, the Victorian disappeared into the gray curtain of rain. The house I built with my own hands. The house where I married Catherine, under the cherry tree. The house where I raised my son. The trash bag pressed against my chest, and deep inside it, something hard and heavy shifted against my ribs. Something that did not feel like clothes or tools. Something hidden. I would not discover what it was for another 2 hours, and when I did, everything I believed about my family would crack open like that hollow piece of oak and reveal a truth that would bring my son's world crashing down around his ears. My wet shoes slapped the pavement like raw meat on a cutting board. The rain had soaked through the leather, and my socks squished between my toes with every step. I walked east on Tacoma Street, clutching the trash bag under one arm, head down, praying nobody would recognize Frankie Morrison, the carpenter, looking like a vagrant shuffling through the dark. 8 blocks. That is how far I walked before my knees started to buckle. 8 blocks of memories. I passed the corner where Catherine and I walked every Sunday for coffee. Gone now. Replaced by a yoga studio. I passed the school where I volunteered to build shelving for the library. I passed the lot where I framed the community center roof 20 years ago. This neighborhood had my sweat in its bones, and now it was spitting me out like a splinter. I stopped under a closed dry cleaner's awning and pulled out my wallet. My fingers were so numb I nearly dropped it. Under the dim streetlight, I counted what I had. A 10. 2 singles. $12. My entire net worth. 50 years of work. A home worth $1.1 million. And now $12 and a garbage bag. 82nd Avenue appeared ahead. A river of neon and headlights. Portland's Motel Row. The kind of street where nobody asks your name as long as the cash is green. I found the Starlight Motel 3 blocks down. The sign was missing the second T. The parking lot held a rusted van and a sedan with a shattered windshield. The lobby smelled of mildew and burned coffee. A young man behind the counter glanced up from his phone. How much for a room? $38 a night. I stood there dripping on his floor. I have $12. Just need a few hours until morning. He looked at me. Looked at the leaking trash bag. Looked at my shaking hands. Something flickered in his eyes. Pity. Or maybe just the desire to stop looking at a wrecked old man. Room 114. Around back. Gone by 6? Or I call the cops. He slid a key across the counter. I whispered thank you, but I do not think he heard. The room was what $12 bought on 82nd Avenue. Mustard carpet. A bedspread that smelled of cigarettes. A heater, rattling out air barely warmer than outside. But it was dry and it was out of the rain, and right now that was everything. I dropped the bag on the floor and sat on the mattress. The springs groaned. I looked at my hands under the yellow lamp. These hands had built 300 pieces of custom furniture. These hands had framed houses and hung drywall and held Catherine's face the morning she died. Now they could not buy a cup of coffee. Something between a laugh and a sob came out of my throat. I pressed my palms over my eyes. I would not cry. Not in a room that smelled like failure. The heater rattled. The neon sign pulsed red through thin curtains. The rain drummed the roof, and the trash bag sat in the corner, leaking a puddle onto the carpet. Catherine's flannel sleeve poking through the rip like a hand reaching out. I should throw it in the dumpster. That was my first thought. Dylan called it junk. He threw it at me like garbage. But that flannel sleeve, that was Catherine's Sunday gardening shirt. I could not throw her away. Not even if my own son already had. I slid off the bed and knelt on the damp carpet, tore the plastic wider. The smell hit me like a whisper. Sawdust and lavender. My two worlds. Her two worlds. Workshop and garden, mixed together. I pulled items out. Work gloves stained with walnut oil. Her flannel, soft and faded. 2 chisels wrapped in a shop rag. A hand plane. I had owned 30 years. Then at the bottom my fingers closed around something that stopped my breathing. A piece of oak. 14 inches long. 6 wide. I recognized it immediately. The picture frame I had been carving for Catherine before she died. An anniversary gift. I never finished. She had asked for it years ago. A frame for our wedding photo carved from a single piece of white oak. But something was wrong. The piece was heavier than it should be. Much heavier. I shook it, and something shifted inside. A muffled metallic rattle like coins in a tin. I turned it over. The bottom had been hollowed out. Not by me. The cuts were clean, but the style was different. Someone had taken a router and carved a cavity into the underside, then sealed it with a thin panel glued flush. Careful work. Patient work. Catherine's work. 40 years in my shop had taught her enough. She had taken my unfinished project and made it into a hiding place. She had turned my failure to finish her gift into a secret vault. My heart hammered. I grabbed the hand plane and used its edge to pry at the sealed panel. The glue cracked. Wood splintered, and inside the cavity, wrapped in layers of silver duct tape, sat a metal box no bigger than a paperback novel. I set it on the bedspread. The duct tape was wound tight, layers upon layers. The work of someone who wanted this to survive anything. I picked at the edge with my thumbnail, peeling back the silver strip inch by inch. My hands were not shaking anymore. Somewhere between finding the hollow oak and peeling the tape, the trembling had stopped completely. I did not notice when. I only knew that my fingers were steady now. Steady the way they got when I was fitting a dovetail joint or cutting a mortise, when the work required precision and there was no room for doubt. The last strip of tape came free. The metal lid was cold under my fingertips. I could hear my own heartbeat in the silence of the room. The neon sign outside pulsed once. Red. Then dark. Then red again. I lifted the lid, and the $12 room at the Starlight Motel on 82nd Avenue became the richest place I had ever been in my entire life. The first thing I saw was money. Not crisp bank bundles with paper bands. Rough stacks held together with rubber bands, the kind you get from selling things at flea markets and craft shows. 10s. 20s. 50s. All old bills worn soft at the edges. I stared at them the way a drowning man stares at a rope thrown from shore. I reached in and lifted the first stack. 20s. I counted them with numb fingers. $500. I counted another. 500 more. Stack after stack after stack, packed tight into the metal box like sardines. I laid them out on the cigarette-burned bedspread in neat rows. When I finished counting, my mouth was hanging open, and my eyes were blurring. $25,000. Cash. Sitting on a motel bed that cost $12 a night. Beneath the money was something else. A small brass key on a thin chain. No label, no tag. Just a number stamped into the metal. 47. A safety deposit box key. I recognized the style from the old First Federal branch on Hawthorne, where Catherine and I had banked for 30 years. And beneath the key, folded into a tight square and pressed against the bottom of the box was a letter. 3 pages of cream-colored stationery, the kind Catherine used for her correspondence, the kind that smelled faintly of the lavender sachets she kept in her desk drawer. I unfolded it with hands that had gone completely still. The handwriting was hers. I would know it anywhere, that elegant slant, the way she crossed her T's with a long, confident stroke. The date at the top was 18 months before she died. She had written this while she was still healthy, while she still had time to plan. "My dearest Frankie," it began, "if you are reading this, then the thing I feared most has happened. Dylan has taken the house. He has taken your money, and he has thrown you out, like you are nothing. I am so sorry, my love. I am sorry I could not stop it. I am sorry I could not make you see what he truly is while I was still alive to protect you. I had to stop reading." The words swam in front of me. I pressed the paper against my chest and breathed. In and out. In and out. Her handwriting, her voice in my head, soft and steady the way it always was when she had something important to say. I kept reading. "I tried to warn you. I told you his smile never reached his eyes. I told you he was dangerous. But you loved him because he was your son. And a father's love is blind, in ways that a wife's love is not. So I did the only thing I could do. I prepared. Frankie, I have been selling my jewelry for 18 years. The pieces I made in the studio, the ones I sold at art shows and online. You thought it was a hobby. You thought I made a little pocket money, but I was careful. I was patient, and I was saving every cent in a place Dylan could never find. The total is $800,000. I read that number 3 times. 800,000. Catherine. My quiet, gentle Catherine, who wore gardening gloves and hummed old songs while she soldered silver in her studio. She had built a fortune in secret. Piece by piece. Ring by ring. Necklace by necklace. For 18 years, the money is in a trust account held by Megan. You remember Megan? My daughter from my first marriage. She lives in Seattle now. She is a forensic accountant, and she is the only person on earth I trust with this. Dylan does not know about the account. He does not know about Megan's involvement. He thinks she is nobody. Megan. I had not spoken to her since Catherine's funeral. Dylan had made sure of that. He had slowly cut off every connection, isolated me from everyone who might have helped. I thought Megan had simply drifted away. Now I understood. She had been waiting, holding the shield Catherine had built. In the safety deposit box at First Federal, you will find a USB drive. On that drive is 5 years of evidence I collected. Bank statements Dylan forged. Wire transfers to offshore accounts. Emails between him and men whose names I could not pronounce. Construction invoices for projects that do not exist. It is all there, Frankie. Every lie. Every theft. Every crime. Find Megan. She knows everything. She has been waiting for my signal. And if you are reading this letter, then the signal is you. Go to her. Take the key. Get the drive. And fight Frankie. Do not let him erase you. Do not let him win. I turned to the last page. The handwriting changed here. It was shakier, written at a different time, maybe weeks later. The ink was darker, pressed harder into the paper. P.S. There is one more thing, and it frightens me more than anything else. 6 months ago, Dylan asked me about life insurance. He wanted to know if you had a policy. I told him no, but I found paperwork in his office last week. He took out a policy on you, Frankie. $1.5 million. He is the sole beneficiary. Do you understand what that means? You are worth more to him dead than alive. He does not just want your house. He does not just want your money. He wants you gone permanently. Whether that means a nursing home or something worse, I do not know. But I know this, my love. You are not safe near him. You have not been safe for a long time. Take the money. Find Megan. Hire the toughest lawyer in the state of Oregon. and destroy him before he destroys you. I love you, Frankie. I love you more than 40 years of marriage could ever express. I am sorry I cannot be there to fight beside you. But I built you an arsenal. Use it. All my love. Forever. Cat. I lowered the letter. The room was silent, except for the rattle of the heater and the rain on the roof. But the silence felt different now. It was not the silence of a man who had lost everything. It was the silence before thunder. I looked at the money on the bed. 25,000 in cash. I looked at the key on its thin chain. 800,000 in a trust. I looked at Catherine's letter. 3 pages of her elegant handwriting that mapped out 18 years of preparation. My wife had known. She had seen the rot in our son before I could. And instead of arguing with me, instead of forcing a confrontation I would not have believed, she had quietly, patiently built a weapon. She had spent 18 years crafting a shield from the shadows, the same way she crafted her jewelry, piece by piece, invisible to everyone but her. 1.5 million in life insurance. I was worth more dead than alive to my own son. The thought should have terrified me. And it did. Somewhere beneath the surface. But above the fear, something else was rising. Something hot and sharp that I had not felt since Catherine died. Purpose. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my shirt pocket against my chest. I hung the brass key around my neck and tucked it under my collar. I put the cash back in the metal box and set it inside my coat on the bed. It was 11 at night. I had no phone. I had no car. I had 17 hours until the motel clerk kicked me out at 6. But I had $25,000, a key to a vault full of evidence, and a dead wife who had outsmarted my son from beyond the grave. Dylan Morrison thought he had thrown away an old man with a bag of junk. He had no idea that the junk was a loaded gun. And come morning, I was going to start pulling the trigger. I left the Starlight Motel at 5:45 in the morning, 15 minutes before the clerk's deadline. The rain had stopped overnight, but the air was raw and bitter, the kind of cold that crawls inside your collar and nests against your spine. I walked with the metal box wrapped in Catherine's flannel shirt and stuffed deep inside my coat. $25,000 pressed against my ribs like a second heartbeat. The streets were empty except for delivery trucks and the occasional jogger breathing clouds of steam. I needed a phone. Not my cell phone, which was back at the house and probably in Dylan's hands by now. I needed something untraceable. Catherine's letter had made one thing clear. My son was monitoring everything. If he knew I had found the money, if he knew I was still thinking clearly, the insurance policy would move from a long-term investment to an immediate payday. I found a 24-hour convenience store on Powell Boulevard. The fluorescent lights inside were blinding after the gray dawn. I bought a prepaid calling card for $5 and asked the cashier where the nearest payphone was. She looked at me like I had asked for a telegram office. But she pointed down the block toward a gas station that still had one bolted to the outside wall. The payphone was ancient, covered in stickers and scratched with initials. I picked up the receiver. It smelled like metal and old rain. I punched in the card number, then dialed from memory. Catherine had made me memorize Megan's number years ago. Just in case, Frankie. Just in case. It rang 4 times. I watched the gas station attendant hosing down the concrete lot. A bus rumbled past, shaking the phone booth. Then a voice, sharp and alert, despite the early hour. Hello? Who is this? Megan. It is Frank. Silence. 3 seconds that felt like 30. Then her voice came back. And it was different. Lower. Tight. With something between relief and fury. Frank. Oh God. Are you okay? Where are you? I am at a payphone on Powell Boulevard. Portland. Megan? Listen to me. He did it. Dylan took the house. He threw me out last night. I heard her inhale sharply. Then a sound like a fist hitting a table. That son of a bitch, she whispered. Mom said he would. She said it was coming. Frank, tell me you found it. Tell me you found the oak. I found it. The money. The letter. The key. All of it. Thank God. Her voice cracked just slightly before she pulled it together. Okay. Okay. Listen. I have been waiting for this call for 2.5 years. Mom made me promise. She made me swear on her deathbed that when this day came, I would be ready. And I am ready, Frank. She was talking fast now, the way people talk when they have rehearsed something 1,000 times and finally get to say it out loud. The $800,000 is in a trust account at Pacific Northwest Credit Union. It is in your name, but I am the custodian. Dylan cannot touch it. He does not know it exists. He does not even know which bank it is in. Mom set it up through 3 layers of shell accounts that I manage. Megan, I said, and my voice sounded strange to me, old and tired and desperate. The letter mentioned a life insurance policy. Another silence. Shorter this time. When she spoke again, her voice was flat, controlled. The voice of a forensic accountant delivering facts. $1.5 million. Metropolitan Life. Policy taken out 14 months ago. Dylan is the sole beneficiary. He forged your signature on the application, same as he forged it on the deed transfer. He used a doctor named Petrov to complete the medical exam paperwork without you being present. I leaned my forehead against the cold metal of the phone booth. 1.5 million. My son had put a price on my head, and it was $1.5 million. There is more, Megan continued. He called me last week. First time in 2 years. He was fishing. He asked if Mom had ever mentioned any accounts or savings I did not know about. He said he was organizing the estate. His voice was friendly, but I could hear the hunger underneath. He is looking for the money, Frank. He knows something exists, but he does not know what or where. My grip tightened on the receiver. He was hunting. He had thrown me out, and now he was hunting for the rest. If he found out about the $800,000, he would come for it. And for me, what about the USB? I asked. The evidence Catherine collected. I have a backup copy here in Seattle, but the original is in the safety deposit box. You have the key. Box 47 at First Federal on Hawthorne. Frank, that drive has everything. 5 years of wire transfers, forged construction invoices, communications with a Russian lending syndicate. Mom tracked every dollar he stole and every lie he told. It is enough to put him away for 20 years. I closed my eyes. Catherine, my brilliant, quiet, patient wife, working in silence for 5 years, documenting every crime, building a case file that would make a prosecutor weep with joy, all while smiling at Dylan across the dinner table, all while pretending everything was fine. Megan, I need you here. I am already packing. There is a 6 a.m. flight from Seattle to Portland. I land at 7:15. But Frank, listen to me. We cannot do this alone. We need a lawyer, not some family attorney who handles divorces. We need someone with teeth, someone who knows how to fight dirty, someone who terrifies people. I thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. I know someone, I said. He lives 3 houses down from where I used to live. Retired federal judge. Meanest man I have ever played chess with. He has been itching for a fight for 4 years. Can you trust him? With my life, then go to him. Today. Right now. Do not wait. Frank, I need you to understand something. Her voice dropped even lower. Dylan is selling the house Friday morning. I found the listing last night on a private broker site. A Chinese development company is buying it for $700,000. Cash closing. No contingencies. If that sale goes through, the house is gone forever. Friday. Today was Wednesday. I had 2 days. And there is something else Mom told me. Right before she died, she grabbed my hand and said, "If it comes to this, do not let Frank feel guilty. He is going to have to destroy his own son, and it is going to break his heart. But some things are worth breaking for. I could not speak. The words sat in my throat like a stone. I will be there tonight, Megan said. Go to your judge. Get the key. Get the evidence. And Frank, do not go anywhere near that house. Do not let Dylan see you. As far as he knows, you are a confused old man sleeping under a bridge somewhere. Let him think that. It is our greatest weapon. I understand. I love you, Frank. Mom loved you. We are going to finish what she started. The line went dead. I hung up the receiver and stood there in the cold morning air. The sun was beginning to break through the clouds for the first time in days, just a sliver of gold on the eastern horizon. I watched it grow. A new day. A new war. I had 2 days. I had $25,000 in cash, a key to a vault of evidence, and a dead wife's army waiting to assemble. My son thought I was dead weight. He thought I was garbage. He was about to find out what happens when you throw away something that still has fight left in it. I turned my collar up against the cold and started walking toward Selwood, toward Hank Volkov's house, toward the man who was going to help me take my life back. I rented a pickup truck from a lot on Foster Road. $300 cash, no questions. The owner handed me keys to a gray Chevy with 200,000 miles on it. It smelled of motor oil and pine freshener. Perfect. Driving to Selwood felt like swallowing glass. I could see my house 3 blocks ahead. The Victorian I built in 1988, Dylan's black Range Rover parked in the driveway like a conqueror's flag. I forced my eyes away and pulled into the driveway 3 houses down. Hank Volkov's cottage was small and tidy, painted forest green with white trim. A chess set visible through the front window, pieces frozen mid-game. I had played chess with Hank every Thursday for 6 years. He beat me 4 out of 5 and never let me forget it. He opened the door in a flannel robe holding coffee black as motor oil. 69 years old, built like a fire hydrant, silver hair cropped close. His pale blue eyes went wide. Frankie, you look like you slept in a ditch. Close. A motel on 82nd. He stepped aside. Get in here before you fall over. His living room smelled like pipe tobacco and old paper. Bookshelves floor to ceiling. Legal volumes, biographies, mystery novels. He sat me at the kitchen table, put coffee in front of me, and said one word. Talk. So I talked. The signing 18 months ago. The eviction. Dylan and Victor. The trash bag. The motel. The hollow oak. The money. The letter. The key. The insurance. Megan. Friday. Hank listened without interrupting. Those ice blue eyes locked on mine, coffee growing cold in his hands. When I finished, the silence lasted 4 seconds. That boy, Hank said quietly, is going to prison. He walked to his laptop and his fingers moved across the keyboard with a speed that startled me. For a retired man in a bathrobe, Hank Volkov still moved like a predator when the scent hit him. 30 years on the federal bench, he said as he typed. I sent men away for exactly this. Elder fraud, wire fraud, asset theft. I know how these animals work, and I know how to catch them. He glanced over his glasses. I also still have friends in places your son does not want me to have friends. For 2 hours, Hank made calls. He used a voice I had never heard. Not the wry man who argued chess openings over bourbon. This was the federal judge. The voice that silenced courtrooms. He called contacts at the county recorder's office. A private investigator from his bench days. Someone at the state attorney general's office who owed him from 2014. I sat eating toast he had shoved at me, watching a master work. Like watching a craftsman who knows exactly which tool to reach for. At 11:30, Hank stopped. He turned his chair to face me. The playful spark in his eyes was gone. It is worse than the letter says. Frankie, your son discovered offshore crypto casinos 2 years ago. Unregulated platforms run by a syndicate in Vladivostok. He has been hemorrhaging money since, chasing losses with bigger bets. Hank turned the laptop toward me. A spreadsheet. Numbers. Dates. Accounts. He owes $2.2 million. Not to a bank. To people who break things that do not grow back. I felt the blood leave my face. 6 months ago, he took out a home equity line on your house. Forged your signature. Forged the notary seal. My contact pulled the filing. The signature is close, but shaky. Amateur work. He drew $800,000 against the property and gambled every cent within 6 weeks. My house. Board by board. Fed into a digital slot machine. The bank is threatening foreclosure because he never made a payment. But that is not why he is selling. The Russians gave him a deadline. Friday. Cash. Or they send people. Hank leaned forward. And here is what should terrify you. He filed an emergency guardianship petition yesterday. A doctor named Petrov paid cash. Signed an affidavit claiming you have advanced dementia. Hearing is next Tuesday. I gripped the table edge. If the sale closes Friday, he pays the Russians. If guardianship goes through Tuesday, he controls your person. Puts you in a state facility. Medicated. Forgotten. And when you conveniently die in 6 months, he collects $1.5 million from the insurance policy. The room tilted. My own son. The boy who fell asleep on my shoulder while I read him stories. Planning to cage me and wait for me to die. We have to stop the sale, I whispered. Yes. But we cannot file a motion in time. An emergency injunction takes 48 to 72 hours. The sale is in less than 48. By the time a judge reviews it, the deed is transferred to a third-party buyer who purchased legally. Then what? Hank stopped pacing. He turned. And there it was. The shark smile. The one I had only seen once, when he told me about the mob boss he sentenced to 40 years. We buy his debt. I stared. The Russians think Dylan is a dead asset. 2 years late, no assets in his own name, high flight risk. Getting 20 cents on the dollar is a miracle for them. If we buy the promissory note, we become his creditor. As a secured creditor, we place an immediate lien on all assets and freeze pending transactions. We walk into that closing Friday and legally seize the deal before his pen touches paper. How much? $450. For $2.2 million. They will bite our hands off. $450,000. More than half of Catherine's savings, my safety net, my future. I thought of the house, the cherry tree, the porch where my son knelt me in the rain. Megan lands tonight, I said. The money is in her trust. Hank nodded. Buy the debt tomorrow morning. Freeze assets by noon. Friday we walk in and take everything back. He drained his cold coffee. Your wife did not just save you money, Frankie. She saved you a war chest, and I have not had a good war in 4 years. He was right. Catherine had not just prepared for this day. She had armed me for it. And now, the general had arrived. Megan arrived at 9 that evening. I heard the taxi pull up outside Hank's cottage, and I was at the door before she could knock. She stepped inside carrying a leather laptop bag over one shoulder and a small rolling suitcase. She was tall like her mother, with Catherine's dark hair cut short and practical, and Catherine's eyes, brown and sharp and missing nothing. She was 34 years old, and she looked like she had not slept in 2 days. She saw me and stopped. For a moment we just stood there in Hank's narrow hallway, the radiator ticking behind us, the smell of pipe tobacco in the air. Then she dropped her bags and wrapped her arms around me. She squeezed hard, the way Catherine used to, like she was trying to hold all the broken pieces together with the pressure of her grip. I am here, she whispered against my shoulder. I am here, Frank. I held her. This woman who was not my blood daughter, but who had been more loyal to me than my own son. Catherine's girl. The one Catherine trusted with everything. Hank cleared his throat from the kitchen doorway. Reunion later. War Council now. We gathered around Hank's dining table. He had cleared away the crosswords and chess books, replacing them with legal pads, printed documents, and a pot of fresh coffee. Megan opened her laptop and connected a USB drive, the backup copy of what Catherine had collected. Mom started documenting Dylan's finances 5 years before she died, Megan said, pulling up folders on the screen. She did not tell me why at first. She just asked me to help her understand certain transactions. Wire transfers, shell companies, invoice patterns that did not match actual construction work. She clicked through files. Bank statements with highlighted entries. Emails between Dylan and addresses ending in .ru domains. Construction invoices for a project in Lake Oswego that Megan had physically driven past. There is nothing there, she said. Empty lot. The invoice claims $200,000 in foundation work. The money went straight to an offshore account in Cyprus. Hank leaned forward, studying the screen. How many of these phantom projects? 11 that we can confirm. Total value, invoiced, $3.4 million over 4 years. Not a single one produced a finished structure. He was laundering money through fake construction contracts and skimming from investors who thought they were buying into luxury condos. I sat there listening to my son's crimes laid out in spreadsheets and timestamps. Each file was another nail, another betrayal. Catherine had watched him do this for 5 years and documented every step, building a case file with the patience of a woman who knew exactly what was coming. This is enough for a federal indictment, Hank said, his voice carrying the weight of 3 decades of courtroom experience. Wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, elder abuse for the forged deed, and the guardianship petition. If we hand this to a prosecutor, Dylan is looking at 15 to 25 years. But we cannot hand it over yet, Megan said. If we go to the police now, Dylan panics. He runs, or he destroys originals, or worse, he accelerates whatever he is planning for Frank. We need to neutralize him first. Then we hand him to the feds on a silver platter. Hank nodded. Agreed. The debt purchase is our primary weapon. Once we own his obligations, we control the board. He cannot sell, he cannot transfer, he cannot sneeze without our permission. Megan pulled up another screen. A bank portal showing the trust account balance. The number sat there, glowing blue against the white screen. $800,000.14. Catherine's 18 years of patience reduced to digits on a monitor. Here is the math, Megan said. Her forensic accountant voice was clinical, detached, the way surgeons sound when they explain the risks before cutting. $450,000 to buy the debt. That leaves $350,000 as a safety net. It is still a substantial sum, but it is less than half of what Mom built. If the debt purchase fails, if they do not accept our offer, if something goes wrong at the closing, we have burned through our war chest for nothing. She looked at me. Hank looked at me. The kitchen clock ticked on the wall. Outside, the rain had started again, drumming softly on the roof. Frank, Megan said gently, this is your call. It is your money. Mom left it for you. If you want to take it and disappear, start over somewhere warm. Nobody would blame you. You have enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life. You do not have to fight. I looked at the laptop screen. 800,000. A life raft. A quiet retirement somewhere without winter. Without Dylan. Without the memory of my knees hitting wet concrete. Then I looked at the wall above Hank's bookshelf. He had a framed photo there. Slightly crooked. A neighborhood barbecue from 6 years ago. Catherine was in it, laughing, holding a glass of lemonade. I was next to her with my arm around her waist. Hank was in the background arguing with someone about the Trailblazers. And in the corner, almost out of frame, Dylan stood alone checking his phone. Not part of the group. Already somewhere else. Catherine spent 18 years building this shield. She worked in silence, sold her art piece by piece, squirreled away every dollar. All because she knew this day would come. She did not do it so I could run. She did it so I could fight. Buy the debt, I said. All of it. Megan nodded. No hesitation. She had been waiting for those words. Tomorrow morning, Hank said, standing up and stretching his back. I will call the syndicate's lawyer at 8. Make the offer. If they accept, and they will, we wire the money by noon. By 1 o'clock, you will legally own every dollar your son owes to the most dangerous people in the Pacific Northwest. And then what? I asked. Then we prepare for Friday. Hank smiled that shark smile again. We walk into that closing room, and we take his world apart piece by piece. The same way he took apart yours. Megan closed the laptop. The screen went dark, taking Catherine's numbers with it. She reached across the table and put her hand over mine. Her fingers were cold from the long flight, but her grip was strong. Mom told me something the day before she died, Megan said. She was barely conscious, but she squeezed my hand and said, when the time comes, do not let Frank feel guilty. He is going to have to destroy his own son, and it will break his heart. But some things are worth breaking for. I looked at our hands together on the table. My scarred carpenter's hands and her slender accountant's fingers. Two people who loved the same woman, connected by a promise made to a dying breath. I do not feel guilty, I said. And it was almost true. Hank poured 3 glasses of bourbon from a bottle he kept above the refrigerator. He handed one to each of us and kept one for himself. He raised his glass. To Catherine, he said. The smartest woman any of us ever knew. To Mom, Megan whispered. To Cat, I said. We drank. The bourbon burned going down, but it warmed something deeper than my stomach. It warmed the cold place that had been frozen since my knees hit concrete in the rain. Tomorrow we would buy my son's soul. Tonight, we planned the war. Thursday morning broke gray and still. No rain for the first time in 4 days. I took it as a sign, though I could not say whether it was a good one or a bad one. We gathered in Hank's kitchen at 7:30. Coffee. Toast. Silence. The silence of people about to cross a line they cannot uncross. At 8 o'clock sharp, Hank picked up his phone and dialed a number he had gotten from his investigator overnight. He put it on speaker and set it on the kitchen table between us. Megan had her laptop open, ready to initiate the wire transfer the moment the word came. I sat with my hands flat on the table, trying to keep them from shaking. The phone rang 3 times. Then a voice answered. Smooth and professional. Kozlov and Associates. Who is calling? This is Benjamin Volkov, Hank said. He was using his middle name. A precaution. His voice was steady and commanding, the voice of a man who moved money for a living. I represent a private investment group interested in acquiring a distressed asset from your client's portfolio. Specifically, the obligations of one Dylan Morrison. Silence on the line. Then a dry chuckle. Morrison. That name gives me heartburn. How do you know about that account? We specialize in distressed debt recovery. Hank lied without blinking. We believe we can extract value where your client cannot. He is 2 years delinquent, the lawyer said. 0 assets in his name. High flight risk. My client has written this one off internally. It is a dead file. Then you should be happy to unload it, Hank said. We are offering $450,000. Cash. Wired today. Another silence. Longer this time. I could hear the faint sound of a keyboard clicking on the other end. The note is for $2.2 million, the lawyer said carefully. You are offering 20 cents on the dollar. I am offering 20 cents on a dollar you will never see otherwise, Hank replied. Your client has spent 2 years trying to collect from Morrison with nothing to show for it. No assets to seize. No income to garnish. You send men to his house. You get nothing but a police report. You take him to court. You spend another $100,000 in legal fees, chasing a ghost. Hank leaned toward the phone. $450. Today. Clean transfer. You close the file and never think about Morrison again. I need to consult, the lawyer said. Hold please. The line went to hold music. Tinny classical. Vivaldi. I stared at the phone like it was a bomb. Megan's fingers hovered over her keyboard. Hank sat back and folded his arms, perfectly calm. He had done this before. He had spent 30 years watching men squirm under pressure. He knew the rhythm. 2 minutes passed. 3. 4. I counted the ticks of the kitchen clock. Each one felt like a heartbeat. The music stopped. The lawyer returned. $575. Final offer. Hank did not hesitate. $475. And I wire it within the hour. Your client has the money before lunch. Or we walk, and your dead file stays dead for another 2 years. Silence. 5 seconds. 10. 500 even. That is my floor. Hank looked at me. I looked at Megan. She nodded once, almost imperceptibly. 500,000. It was 50,000 more than planned. It would leave us 300,000 instead of 350. Still enough. Still a safety net. I nodded. Done. Hank said into the phone. Wire instructions. Sending to your encrypted email now. Once funds clear, the promissory note and all attached liens transfer to your client. Full assignment. You become the creditor of record. Pleasure doing business. Hank said. Never call this number again. The lawyer replied. The line went dead. The kitchen was silent for exactly 2 seconds. Then Megan exhaled like she had been holding her breath for 5 minutes. Hank allowed himself a small, tight smile. We have the deal, he said. Now we need to move the money before he changes his mind. We drove to Pacific Northwest Credit Union on Burnside. Megan and I walked in together. She handled the paperwork because the trust was in her name as custodian. I sat beside her at the banker's desk and signed where she pointed. The banker was a middle-aged woman with reading glasses on a chain who looked at the wire amount and blinked 3 times. 500,000. She repeated. May I ask the purpose of the transfer? Debt acquisition. Megan said crisply. Real estate related. The banker typed. Asked for identification. Typed more. Made a phone call to verify the receiving account. My leg bounced under the desk. Every second felt like sand running through an hourglass. If Dylan somehow found out, if the Russians changed their minds, if something went wrong with the wire, transfer initiated, the banker said finally. Funds will clear within 2 hours. We walked out into the gray Portland morning. The air was cold, but the rain had held off. Megan gripped my arm as we crossed the parking lot. It is done, she said. Half of Mom's money. Gone in one transaction. Not gone, I said. Invested. In justice. She squeezed my arm tighter and did not let go until we reached the truck. Back at Hank's cottage, we waited. Hank paced. I sat at the table staring at my hands. Megan refreshed her email every 30 seconds. At 11:42, her laptop pinged. Wire confirmed received. She read aloud. Then, another email. Seconds later. An attachment. She opened it. Promissory note. Assignment of debt. All liens transferred. She looked up at me, her eyes bright. Frank, you now legally own every dollar Dylan Morrison owes. 2.2 million. He is yours. I let the words sink in. My son owed me $2.2 million. I was his creditor, his master. The man he had thrown into the rain now held the paper on his life. Hank was already on the phone to his judge contact. I need an emergency freeze order. Yes. Today. Asset preservation. The debtor is attempting to liquidate real property in violation of secured creditor rights. Filing number. He rattled off details while Megan fed him information from her laptop. By 1:15, the order was signed. Faxed to Hank's machine with a judge's stamp still warm on the page. No assets of Dylan Morrison could be sold, transferred, or encumbered without the written consent of the creditor of record, me. Hank held up the facts like a trophy. The house cannot be sold tomorrow without your signature. The closing is dead before it starts. I looked at the document. My name printed in black ink. Creditor. The word felt foreign and powerful and terrible all at once. 24 hours ago, I had $12. Now I controlled $2.2 million in debt and had the legal authority to freeze my son's entire life. Catherine's voice echoed in my memory. Do not let him take everything. I had not. And tomorrow morning, I was going to take it all back. The call came at 2 in the afternoon. We were still at Hank's kitchen table, running through logistics for Friday, when Megan's phone buzzed with an unknown Portland number. She answered on speaker. Megan? The voice was a whisper. Female. Young. Shaking at the edges like a wire pulled too tight. This is Heather. Dylan's wife. Please, do not hang up. Megan looked at me. I felt my spine go rigid. Heather Morrison. I had met her twice at family dinners, before Catherine died. Quiet. Pretty. Always watching Dylan with an expression I had mistaken for adoration but now recognized as something else entirely. Vigilance. Heather. Megan said carefully. How did you get this number? A mutual friend. Jessica Park. She gave me your cell when I told her I needed to reach Frank's family. Please. I do not have much time. Dylan went to the gym 20 minutes ago. He usually stays an hour, but sometimes he comes back early. You are at the house, I said. My voice came out rough. A pause. Frank. Oh God. Frank. Are you okay? I saw what he did Tuesday night. I was upstairs. He told me to stay in the bedroom. I heard the door slam. I looked out the window and saw you on the ground in the rain. And I wanted to come down. But Victor was still in the hallway. And her voice broke. A small, strangled sound. It is okay, I said. Though nothing about this was okay. Heather, tell me, what is happening in that house? She took a breath. Then the words came like water through a cracked dam. Fast and uncontrolled. It has been 3 years, Frank. 3 years of hell. After your wife passed, he changed. Or maybe he stopped pretending. I do not know which. He controls everything. Paris. Also, they 6. AT. The bank accounts, the credit cards. I have no money of my own. He checks my phone. He checks the mileage on my car. If I buy the wrong brand of anything, he screams until the walls shake. I closed my eyes. Hank sat motionless across the table, his face unreadable. He punches walls, Heather continued. He threw a coffee mug at the mirror last month because I asked about a credit card statement. He has never hit me. Not yet, but the holes in the drywall are getting closer to where I stand. He makes sure I see them. He makes sure I know what he is capable of. My son. The boy I taught to hold a hammer with care. Using his fists on the walls of the house I built. Using fear as a weapon against a woman half his size. Why are you calling now? Megan asked gently. Because I heard him talking in his sleep 2 nights ago. After he threw Frank out, he was tossing and sweating, and he said it out loud. Clear as day. Heather's whisper dropped even lower. He said, the old man is worth more dead. Just needs 6 months. He kept repeating it. 6 months. 6 months. The kitchen went cold. I had read it in Catherine's letter. I had heard Megan confirm it on the phone, but hearing it from someone who lay next to him in the dark, who heard it fall from his unconscious mouth like a confession to the ceiling, that was different. That made it real in a way documents could not. Heather, Hank said, speaking for the first time. His voice was measured and professional. My name is Hank. I am helping Frank with a legal matter. I need to ask you something important. Do you have access to Dylan's laptop or his home office? Yes. He leaves the office unlocked when he goes out. He does not think I am smart enough to understand what is on his computer. Can you copy files from it? Download them onto a USB drive. I think so. Yes. He has a folder on his desktop called Accounts. I have seen spreadsheets in there. And emails. He does not clear his browser history. Hank wrote something on his legal pad and slid it toward Megan. She nodded. Heather. Hank continued. Tomorrow morning something is going to happen. Something that will change everything. We cannot tell you what yet, because we need Dylan to behave normally until then. But I need you to do two things. First, copy those files tonight when he is asleep. Second, pack a bag. A small one. Something you can grab in 30 seconds. Am I leaving? She asked. Her voice held equal parts terror and hope. Yes, I said. When it happens tomorrow, you walk out that door, and you do not look back. We will be there. Silence. I could hear her breathing, shallow and fast. Then she said something that broke a piece of me I did not know was still whole. Frank, I am sorry. I am so sorry I did not do something sooner. I was afraid. He said, if I ever left, he would make sure I had nothing. No money. No house. No references. He said he would tell everyone I was crazy. The same thing he is doing to you. The same playbook. The same script. Isolation. Control. Gaslighting. He had done it to me with the trust papers. He was doing it to her, with the walls, and the silence, and the fear. It is not your fault, I said. The words came out steady, though my chest was burning. None of this is your fault. I have to go. I hear the garage door. Her voice went to a hiss. Tomorrow. I will be ready. I will have the files. The line went dead. The three of us sat in silence. The clock ticked. The radiator hummed. Outside, a crow called from the telephone wire. Harsh and sharp. Megan spoke first. She is terrified. She should be, Hank said. Dylan is a cornered animal with a gambling addiction and $2.2 million in debt. Cornered animals bite whoever is closest. I pushed back from the table and walked to the window. I looked out at the gray street, the bare trees, the familiar roofline of my Victorian 3 houses down. My son was in there right now, doing push-ups or checking his phone or punching walls while his wife counted the minutes until he fell asleep so she could breathe. How did he become this? I said to the window. My breath fogged the glass. I taught him to build things. I taught him to shake hands. I taught him that a man's worth is measured by how he treats the people who cannot fight back. Megan came up behind me. She put her hand on my shoulder. You did not make him this, Frank. Catherine tried to tell you that in her letter. He chose this. Every morning he woke up and chose cruelty. That is not your failure. That is his. I nodded. But the weight did not lift. It would not lift for a long time. Maybe ever. Because no matter what Dylan had done, no matter what he was planning, he was still the boy who handed me nails on Saturday mornings. And tomorrow I was going to destroy him. I turned from the window. What is next? Hank checked his watch. We have one more piece to put in place before Friday. Dylan's escape route. He has a bodyguard and a packed bag. If he bolts before we spring the trap, we lose everything. Victor said. Victor. Hank confirmed. We need to have a conversation with the man who threw you off your porch. Before we could deal with Victor, Hank made a phone call that changed the weight of everything. He dialed a number he had not used in 6 years. And within 40 minutes, 2 men in dark suits were standing on his front porch. Agent Torres was compact and still, with a shaved head and eyes that cataloged everything in a room within 3 seconds of entering it. Agent Kim was taller, younger, with a leather portfolio tucked under his arm, and the patient expression of a man who had spent years building cases brick by brick. They sat on Hank's sofa and declined coffee. They were not here for pleasantries. Judge Volkov, Torres said. The title came out reflexively, even though Hank had been off the bench for 4 years. You said you have something on the Vladivostok group. I have more than something, Hank said. He was sitting in his armchair like it was a throne, one leg crossed over the other. He looked 20 years younger than he had yesterday morning. War suited him. I have a direct line from their lending operation to a domestic money laundering scheme running through shell construction companies in Portland. And I have a witness willing to hand you the entire chain on a platter. Torres and Kim exchanged a glance. Quick. Professional. The kind of look that said this was not new information but rather confirmation of something they had been circling for a long time. We have been watching the Vladivostok lending arm for 18 months, Kim said, opening his portfolio and pulling out a thin folder. Unlicensed gambling platforms feeding into a debt collection operation that crosses 6 state lines. We have the infrastructure mapped, but we lack the domestic connection. We know money is being laundered through real estate on the West Coast, but we have not been able to pin a specific operator. His name is Dylan Morrison, Hank said. 40 years old. Operating out of Portland under the cover of a real estate development firm. He has laundered approximately $3.4 million through 11 phantom construction projects over 4 years. Every invoice is fabricated. Every wire transfer goes through Cyprus before returning as clean investment capital. Hank gestured toward Megan. She opened her laptop and turned the screen toward the agents. Torres leaned forward. His eyes moved across the spreadsheets with the speed of someone who reads financial documents the way most people read newspapers. These are bank-quality records, Torres said quietly. Who compiled this? My mother, Megan said. Catherine Morrison. She was married to Frank for 40 years. She spent the last 5 years of her life documenting her stepson's crimes. She died 2.5 years ago, but she left this as a legacy. Kim was writing rapidly in his notebook. And the domestic connection to the Vladivostok group. Dylan Morrison owes them $2.2 million in gambling losses, Hank said. As of this morning, that debt has been purchased by my client, Frank Morrison, Dylan's father. We now hold the promissory note. But the original relationship between Dylan and the syndicate, the wire transfers, the communications, the threatening behavior, it is all documented in those files. Torres sat back. He looked at me for the first time. Really looked at me. I was sitting in the corner of the room in my wrinkled flannel, my hands wrapped around a cold mug. I probably looked like someone's grandfather who wandered into the wrong meeting. Mr. Morrison, Torres said. Your son did this. To you. It was not a question. I nodded anyway. There is a house sale scheduled for tomorrow morning, Hank continued. 9 a.m. Miller and Associates Title Company, Pearl District. Dylan is selling Frank's home, which he obtained through fraud, to a Chinese development company for $700,000 cash. We have a freeze order preventing the sale, but we intend to confront Dylan at the closing to secure his cooperation and obtain additional evidence. You want us to stay out of it, Kim said. Not accusing. Understanding. Until after the closing, Hank confirmed. If you move on Dylan before tomorrow, he destroys evidence. He runs. He has a bodyguard and a packed bag and a plan to flee to Vancouver. We need him calm and unsuspecting when he walks into that room tomorrow morning. Torres drummed his fingers on his knee. What do you need from us? 2 things. First, a commitment that you will not move until we give the signal. Let us handle the civil action Friday morning. Once Dylan has signed the documents we need, once the fraud is confirmed on paper in front of witnesses, then he is yours. And second, Hank said, I need to know that when we hand him to you, you will not let him plead down to a slap on the wrist. This man stole his father's home. He forged documents. He laundered millions. He took out a life insurance policy on his own father and was planning to let him rot in a state facility until he died. This is not a white-collar misdemeanor. This is predatory elder abuse combined with wire fraud and conspiracy. Torres and Kim looked at each other again. Another silent communication. Then Torres turned back to Hank. Judge, based on what I have seen in the last 15 minutes, and assuming the digital evidence holds up to forensic analysis, your son is looking at 15 to 25 years federal. Wire fraud alone carries 20. Add the elder abuse enhancement, the money laundering, the Russian connection. He paused. There will be no plea bargain. Not on my watch. The words settled into the room like stone. 15 to 25 years. My son would be 65 when he got out. An old man himself. The irony was not lost on me. One more thing, Torres said, standing and buttoning his jacket. If he runs. If something goes wrong tomorrow and he bolts. He won't, I said. Everyone looked at me. He has a bodyguard who is going to make sure of that. Torres raised an eyebrow but did not ask for details. He handed Hank a card. Call this number when the closing is finished. We will have a team standing by within 5 minutes of your signal. They left as quietly as they came. 2 dark suits disappearing into a silver sedan that pulled away from the curb without a sound. I watched through the window until the car turned the corner. 3 layers, Hank said from behind me. Federal charges for the fraud and laundering. State charges for the elder abuse and forgery. And our civil action for the debt and the property. He counted them on his fingers. If he dodges one, he lands in another. If he dodges 2, the third catches him. There is no gap. No escape. Megan closed her laptop. So what now? Hank checked his watch. 4:30 in the afternoon. Now we deal with the last variable. The man standing between Dylan and the exit door. I took a breath. Victor, the man whose hands had guided me off my own porch into the freezing rain. The man whose knuckles cracked like a promise. In a few hours, I was going to sit across from him and ask for his help. The thought should have frightened me. But after spending the afternoon with FBI agents discussing my son's prison sentence, very little could frighten me anymore. I know where he eats dinner, Hank said, grabbing his coat. A diner on Sandy Boulevard. He goes there every Thursday. Creature of habit. I stood up. Then let us go. The diner on Sandy Boulevard was called Rosie's. It had a neon pie in the window and a parking lot that needed repaving. The kind of place that served coffee in ceramic mugs and did not judge you for eating alone. I spotted Victor's car immediately. A black Dodge Charger parked at the far end of the lot, backed into the space the way people park when they want to leave fast. Hank stayed in the truck. This one is yours, Frankie. He needs to see your face. He needs to know who he is dealing with. I nodded and stepped out into the evening air. The temperature had dropped again, and my breath made clouds in the parking lot lights. I walked toward the diner door, feeling my pulse in my temples. The last time I had been this close to Victor, his hands were on my shoulders guiding me toward the cold. I found him in a back booth. He was eating a plate of meatloaf and mashed potatoes, hunched over the food the way big men eat when they have learned to make themselves small in public spaces. He was wearing a gray Henley stretched tight across his chest, and his jacket was folded neatly on the seat beside him. Without the black overcoat and the doorway framing him like a weapon, he looked almost ordinary, almost human. I slid into the booth across from him without asking permission. His fork stopped halfway to his mouth. His eyes locked onto mine, and I watched recognition crash through him like a wave. First surprise, then confusion, then something I did not expect. A flicker of shame that moved across his face so fast, most people would have missed it. But I had spent 50 years reading people across negotiating tables. I caught it. Mr. Morrison, he said. His voice was deep with a faint accent buried under years of American living. He set the fork down slowly. His shoulders went rigid. How did you find me? I know people who know things, I said. And you are a creature of habit, Victor. Rosie's Diner. Every Thursday. Meatloaf special. He stared at me. His jaw worked like he was chewing on words he could not decide whether to spit out or swallow. His right hand moved slightly toward the edge of the table. Instinct. I held up both my palms. I am not here to fight, I said. Look at me. I am 73 years old, and I weigh 160 pounds. If I wanted to hurt you, I would need a ladder and a running start. I am here to talk business. Something shifted in his posture. The rigid readiness loosened by a fraction. He leaned back against the vinyl seat and folded his arms. What business does a man I put on the street have with me? The kind of business that keeps you out of federal prison. That got his attention. His arms unfolded. His eyes narrowed. Let me tell you what I know, I said, keeping my voice low and steady. You work for my son. He pays you in cash. Off the books. No contract. No benefits. No paper trail. You have been with him for 8 months. He hired you through a contact connected to the same Russian group he owes money to. Your job is to look intimidating and occasionally remove inconvenient people from doorways. Victor said nothing, but he was listening. Here is what you might not know. My son owes $2.2 million to the people who connected you to him. As of this morning, that debt belongs to me. I bought it. The Russians are out of the picture. They sold your boss's paper and walked away. I let that sink in. Victor's eyes widened slightly. The Russians were gone. The people he feared. The people who might come after him if he stepped out of line. They had cashed out. I also know, I continued, that Dylan has not paid you in 3 months. He owes you roughly $5,000 in back wages. He keeps promising next week. Next week never comes. Victor's jaw tightened. A muscle in his cheek twitched. I had hit the nerve. And here is the part that concerns you most. The FBI has been building a case against the Russian lending operation for 18 months. Everyone connected to that network is on their radar. Everyone, including the hired muscle. I watched fear settle into his eyes for the first time. Real fear. Not the performative intimidation he wore like a uniform, but the genuine cold sweat of a man who realizes the ground beneath him is hollow. I am not your enemy, Victor. I am offering you a way out. What do you want? He said. His voice was barely above a whisper. I reached into my jacket and pulled out an envelope. I laid it on the table between us, next to his plate of meatloaf. I did not open it, but the thickness was obvious. $5,000. Cash. The money Dylan owes you for 3 months of work. I am paying his debt to you. Victor looked at the envelope. He did not touch it. All I need, I said, is one thing. Tomorrow morning, your boss is going to a meeting downtown, a closing for the house sale. Things are going to go badly for him. When they do, he is going to panic. He has a bag packed in the trunk of his car. Passport. Cash. His plan is to run for Vancouver. He expects you to have the car ready at the back exit. I leaned forward slightly. When that moment comes, I need you to not be there. I need that door to stay shut. I need the car to not start. I need Dylan Morrison to have nowhere to run. Victor stared at me for a long time. The diner clattered around us. Plates. Silverware. The hiss of the grill. A waitress laughing at something the cook said. Normal sounds in a world that had stopped being normal for both of us. He told me you were crazy, Victor said finally. A confused old man. Dangerous. He said you had dementia, and he was protecting his family from you. Do I look confused to you? Victor studied my face. My eyes were clear. My voice was steady. My hands were flat on the table, still as wood. No, he said quietly. You look like my grandfather. He was a carpenter in Odessa. Same hands. He glanced down at my scarred fingers. Same eyes when he was angry. He reached out and picked up the envelope. He did not count it. He slid it inside his jacket. Tuesday night, Victor said, when he told me to remove you from the house. I did not know you were his father. He introduced you as a trespasser, a squatter who had wandered in. I did not know until you called him son on the porch and he laughed." Victor's jaw clenched. "I do not do that. Push old men into the rain. That is not what I signed up for." "Then help me end it." He nodded once. "Short and final. Tomorrow morning. The back exit. The door stays shut. The car does not start." "Thank you, Victor." He picked up his fork and looked down at his meatloaf. "There is one more thing," he said without looking up. "He has a burner phone in the center console. If things go wrong, he is going to call someone. I do not know who. But the phone is there." "Understood." I slid out of the booth. My knees ached, but my heart was steady. I walked out of Rosie's diner into the cold night. Hank was waiting in the truck, the engine running, heat blasting. "Well," he asked. "The door stays shut," I said. "The car does not start. And we have one more piece of intel. A burner phone in the console." Hank smiled. "Every exit closed. Every weapon accounted for. Your son is walking into a box tomorrow morning, and he does not even know the walls are already built." I looked out the windshield at the dark street. Tomorrow was Friday. Tomorrow was the end. The house was quiet after midnight. Hank had gone to bed at 11, moving through his routine with military precision. Teeth. Pills. Lights out. Megan was asleep in the guest room, her laptop still warm on the nightstand. I could hear her breathing through the thin wall. Slow and steady. The breathing of someone who had done everything they could and surrendered the rest to morning. I could not sleep. I sat in Hank's kitchen in the dark, with nothing but the glow of the streetlight through the window and the tick of the clock on the wall. Tomorrow morning at 9, I was going to walk into a room and destroy my son's life. The thought sat in my chest, like a block of lead. The memories came without permission. They always do at night when your defenses are down and the dark gives them room to breathe. Dylan at 8 years old. Sitting on my workbench in the garage, legs swinging, too short to reach the floor, handing me nails one by one from a coffee can while I framed a bookshelf for the living room, his small fingers sorting the 16s from the 8s without being asked. "Like this, Dad?" And my voice, younger then, full of a pride so simple it hurt to remember. "Exactly like that, buddy. You are a natural." Dylan at 15. The first lie I caught. Report card hidden in his backpack. 2 Ds he tried to cover, with a story about a substitute teacher who lost the grades. I found the real card crumpled in his trash can. I grounded him for a month. Catherine said it was too lenient. She said the lying worried her more than the grades. I told her all boys lie at 15. I told her he would grow out of it. Dylan at 20. The money missing from the coffee can in the workshop, $200 I kept for hardware store runs. Gone one morning after he had stayed overnight. I asked him. He looked me in the eye without blinking and said he had no idea. I believed him. I blamed the neighbor kid who had been helping me with a deck project. Catherine said nothing, but her mouth went tight, the way it did when she was holding back words that would start a fight. The signs had been there. All of them. Written in a language I refused to read, because reading it meant admitting that my son, the boy I built with my own hands the same way I built everything else, was broken in a place I could not reach. Catherine had read it. She had read it fluently, and she had tried to tell me. But a father's love is a kind of blindness. It fills in the cracks. It paints over the rot. It says he will grow out of it, and he just needs time. And he is still my boy until the day the ceiling caves in, and you are standing in the rain with a garbage bag wondering where it all went wrong. I put my head in my hands. The clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. And somewhere in the dark, between one breath and the next, I started to cry. It was not a dramatic thing. No sobbing, no sound. Just a steady leak of hot tears running down my face and dripping off my chin onto Hank's kitchen table. I cried for Catherine, who saw the truth and could not make me see it. I cried for the boy on the workbench who handed me nails. I cried for the man that boy became who put a price tag on his father's life. I did not hear Megan come in. She was just suddenly there, standing in the kitchen doorway in an oversized sweater, her hair messy from the pillow. She did not say anything. She walked over, pulled out the chair next to mine, and sat. She put her hand on my arm. We stayed like that for a long time. Two people in the dark, connected by a woman who was gone but still somehow holding us together. Am I a monster? I finally whispered. For doing this to my own boy. Megan's hand tightened on my arm. You are not destroying him, Frank. You are stopping him from destroying everyone else. You, Heather, the next person he targets, the one after that. She paused. Mom saw it. She saw where this was heading. That is why she built the shield. Not to punish Dylan. To protect you. She tried to warn me. She did. And you could not hear it. Because you loved him. That is not a sin, Frank. Loving your child is never a sin. But letting that love blind you to the truth, that is what almost killed you. I wiped my face with my sleeve. Pulled Catherine's letter from my shirt pocket. I had read it a dozen times, but I turned to the last page again. The postscript she had added later, in darker ink. My eyes found the line I needed. Do not feel guilty, Frankie. You are not punishing your son. You are saving the man I married. That man would never let a bully win. I read it twice. 3 times. Let the words settle into my bones the way wood absorbs oil. Slowly. Deeply. Changing the grain from the inside. I folded the letter and put it back in my pocket. Against my chest. Against my heart. What time is the closing? I asked. 9. Megan said. I looked at the clock. 2:30 in the morning. 6.5 hours. I need a suit, I said. And a haircut. Megan looked at me. A small smile crossed her face. The first real smile I had seen from her since she arrived. There is a 24-hour Walmart on 82nd, she said. Not exactly Armani, but we can find something that fits. And I have clippers in my bag. Mom's old travel kit. Not Walmart, I said. I stood up and felt my spine straighten like a post being set into the ground. There is a tailor on Hawthorne Boulevard. He opens at 6. Catherine used to get my dress shirts altered there. He knows my measurements. Frank, it is 2:30 in the morning. Then I will be his first customer. I looked at her. When my son sees me walk through that door tomorrow, I want him to see the man his mother married. Not the old fool he kicked to the curb. I want him to look at me and know that he made the worst mistake of his life. Megan stood. She pulled me into a hug. Brief and fierce. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set. Get some rest, she said. Even 2 hours. You are going to need it. I nodded. But I did not sleep. I sat in the dark for 2 more hours, watching the streetlight through the window, feeling Catherine's letter against my chest, and building tomorrow in my mind the way I used to build houses. One board at a time, one nail at a time, until the structure was solid, and nothing could knock it down. At 5:45, I put on my coat and drove to Hawthorne Boulevard. The tailor's light was already on. The tailor on Hawthorne Boulevard was named Martin Chen. He was 71 years old, and he had been altering clothes in the same narrow shop since 1983. Catherine brought me here every time I needed a dress shirt or a suit for a wedding. Martin knew my shoulders, my inseam, the way my left arm hung slightly shorter than my right from a framing accident in '92. He opened the door at 6 and found me standing on the sidewalk in the pre-dawn dark. Frank Morrison, he said, looking me over with the critical eye of a man who measured the world in quarter inches. You look terrible. Come inside. I told him I needed a suit. Today. Right now. Something that made me look like I owned the building I was walking into. Martin did not ask why. He simply turned to his rack of unclaimed alterations and ready-mades hanging in plastic along the back wall. "Charcoal gray," I said. "My wife always said I looked best in charcoal." He pulled 3 options, held them against my chest one by one, selected a single-breasted Italian wool blend, slim cut, with a subtle pinstripe so faint you could only see it in direct light. He had me strip down to my undershirt and went to work with pins and chalk, his hands moving with the speed and confidence of a craftsman who had done this 10,000 times. I recognized the precision. It was the same precision I used when fitting a dovetail joint. No wasted motion. No hesitation. Every cut deliberate. "How fast?" I asked. 2 hours. "Go get breakfast. Come back at 8. I walked to the coffee shop 3 doors down, ordered black coffee and eggs, and sat by the window watching Hawthorne Boulevard wake up. Joggers. Dog walkers. A woman pushing a stroller. Normal Friday morning. Normal lives continuing while mine was about to collide with my son's in a room downtown. I ate slowly. I had not eaten a real meal since the toast at Hank's yesterday morning. The eggs were good. The coffee was hot. Simple things that mattered more when you had gone without them. At 7:15, Megan texted the burner phone Hank had given me. "Ready. Hank has the files. Security team confirmed. 2 men in the lobby starting at 8:45. I texted back. "Suit at 8. Brief at 8:30. Drive by 8:45. At 8 I returned to Martin's shop. He had the suit hanging on a form near the window. The charcoal fabric caught the early morning light and seemed to shift between gray and silver. He helped me into it. The shoulders sat perfectly. The waist tapered. The trousers broke at exactly the right point above my polished shoes, which Megan had brought from a store on Division Street, along with a white dress shirt and a dark blue tie. I stood in front of Martin's full-length mirror and did not recognize the man looking back. This man was clean-shaven, with silver hair combed back with precision. His jaw was set. His shoulders were square. He did not look like a 73-year-old vagrant who had slept in a motel on 82nd Avenue 3 nights ago. He looked like a man who owned things. A man who decided things. A man you did not cross. "Catherine would approve," Martin said quietly from behind me. "Yes," I said. "She would." I paid him in cash from the envelope, $350 for the suit and the rush alteration. I shook his hand and walked out into the morning. The rain had held off. A thin bar of sunlight cut through the clouds to the east. I took it as a sign. At Hank's cottage, the briefing was quick and surgical. Hank stood at his dining table with a legal pad covered in his precise handwriting. He was wearing his old court suit. Navy pinstripe. Yellowed slightly at the cuffs, but pressed sharp. On him it looked like armor. "Timeline," he said. "We arrive at 8:55. The closing is at 9. Frank and I enter together at 9:05. After the paperwork is laid out, and Dylan has committed to the room. Megan, you wait in the hallway until I text you. When you come in hard." Megan nodded. She was wearing a black blazer over a white blouse, her laptop bag over her shoulder. She looked like a prosecutor walking into court. Security is 2 men, ex-military. They are in the lobby from 8:45. If things escalate physically, they come in on my signal. Otherwise, they stay out of sight. Hank looked at me. "Frank, when you walk in, you say nothing for the first 10 seconds. You walk to the far end of the table. You sit. You unbutton your jacket. You let him look at you. Let him see what you are. Let the silence do the work. And then I do the talking. Until it is time for you to speak. You will know when." I nodded. "One more thing," Hank said. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out an object wrapped in cloth. He set it on the table and unwrapped it. A walking cane. Polished hickory with a brass handle shaped like a ram's head. Heavy. Solid. "It belonged to my father," Hank said. "He was a judge in Kiev before the family came to America. He used to say a man with a cane commands a room because everyone wonders if it is a weapon or a prop. Hank pushed it toward me. Today, it is whatever you need it to be. I picked it up. The hickory was smooth under my palm, dense as iron. The brass handle was cold and heavy. I did not need it to walk, but I understood immediately why Hank offered it. It was a statement. It said I am not fragile. It said I am not prey. We drove to the Pearl District in 2 cars. Hank and I in the Chevy truck. Megan following in a rental sedan. The morning traffic moved slowly through downtown Portland, brake lights reflecting off wet pavement. I watched the city slide past the window, the bridges, the old brick buildings, the new glass towers. This city had been mine for 40 years. I had built pieces of it with my hands. And today I was going to reclaim the most important piece. Miller and Associates Title Company occupied the ground floor of a glass and steel building on 10th Avenue. We parked around the corner. I stepped out and buttoned my jacket, adjusted the tie, gripped the cane in my right hand. Hank came around the truck and stood beside me. He looked at the building, then at me. Ready, ready. We walked toward the entrance. Through the glass doors I could see the conference room. A long mahogany table. Papers spread out. The title agent organizing documents. And there was Dylan. He was pacing at the head of the table. His suit was expensive, but it hung wrong on him, wrinkled at the back like he had slept in it. Sweat shone on his forehead. He kept checking his phone and running a hand through his hair. Across from him sat a man in a cheap suit with a predatory smile. The buyer. The vulture, here to take my home for 60 cents on the dollar. I watched through the glass as the title agent pointed to a line on the page. Dylan sat down, picked up his pen. The tip hovered over the paper. I gripped the cane, felt Catherine's letter against my chest, heard her voice one last time. Do not let him win, Frankie. I pushed the door open. The door did not slam. It did not bang against the wall. It swung open with a smooth, weighted click that cut through the room like a blade drawn from its sheath. Every head turned. Dylan looked up from the signature line. His pen froze mid-air. The ink was still wet on the tip, hovering a quarter-inch above the paper that would have signed away my home. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He blinked 3 times in rapid succession like a man trying to wake from a dream that had suddenly gone wrong. "Dad," he whispered. The word came out strangled, confused, then louder, sharper, as panic replaced shock. "What are you doing here? How did you?" "Security." He stood up so fast his chair shot backward on its wheels and hit the window behind him. He looked at the title agent, then at the buyer, then back at me. His eyes were wild, jumping from point to point like a cornered animal searching for the exit. I said nothing. I walked into the room the way Hank told me to. Slow, steady, the cane clicking softly on the hardwood floor with each step. I did not look at Dylan. End. Over 4. I looked at the far end of the table where an empty chair waited. I pulled it out. I sat down. I unbuttoned my jacket with one hand, laid the cane across my lap, and folded my hands on the polished mahogany surface. Then I looked at my son. 10 seconds of silence. That is what Hank had prescribed. 10 seconds for Dylan to see me. Not the shivering old man he had thrown into the rain 3 nights ago. Not the confused father he had manipulated into signing away his life. This man, the man in the charcoal suit with the steady hands and the eyes that did not blink. The man Catherine had married. I watched the confusion twist Dylan's face into something ugly. He did not know what to do with what he was seeing. His script had no lines for this scene. "You cannot be here," Dylan stammered. He was gripping the edge of the table. His knuckles were white. "You are supposed to be. I mean, you need to leave. This is a private transaction. You have no legal standing here." The title agent, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses perched on her nose, looked from Dylan to me with growing unease. "Mr. Morrison, is everything all right?" Who is this gentleman? He is nobody, Dylan said quickly. He is my father. He has dementia. He wanders. I apologize. I will call someone to collect him. I do not have dementia, I said. My voice filled the room without effort, low and calm and absolute. And I am not wandering. The conference room door opened again. Hank walked in carrying his leather briefcase in one hand and a manila folder in the other. He moved with the unhurried authority of a man who had commanded courtrooms for 3 decades. He closed the door behind him with a soft click and walked to the table. Good morning, Hank said pleasantly. He did not introduce himself. He did not explain. He simply opened the briefcase, pulled out a stack of documents an inch thick, and laid them on the table with a sound like a gavel falling. What is this? Dylan said. His voice cracked on the second word. This, Hank said, sliding the top document toward the title agent, is a certified assignment of debt. As of yesterday afternoon at 11:42 a.m., my client, Frank Morrison, is the legal creditor of record for all obligations owed by Dylan James Morrison. The total outstanding balance is $2.2 million. Dylan's face went from flush to gray in the space of one heartbeat. He stared at the document. I watched his eyes find the logo at the top, the syndicate's holding company, the name he feared more than anything else in the world, and underneath it, a new name. Mine. You, Dylan whispered. He looked at me. The blood had drained so completely from his face that he looked like a corpse propped up in an expensive suit. You bought my debt. Every penny, I said. That is impossible. You have nothing. You are broke. I made sure. You made sure of nothing, I said. You thought you were smarter than everyone. You were wrong. Hank slid a second document toward the title agent. And this is an emergency freeze order issued yesterday afternoon by Judge Watanabe of the Multnomah County Circuit Court. Per this order, no assets held by or associated with Dylan James Morrison may be sold, transferred, encumbered, or disposed of without the written consent of the secured creditor of record. Hank tapped the signature line. That would be Mr. Frank Morrison, my client. The title agent picked up the freeze order and read it. Her face changed from confused to professional alarm. She set the document down carefully and pushed her chair back from the table. Mr. Morrison, she said to Dylan, I cannot proceed with this closing. There is a valid court order preventing the transfer of this property. No, Dylan said. The word came out as a moan. No, no, no. You do not understand. I need this sale. I have a buyer. We have a contract. The buyer across the table had been watching in silence. He was a compact man with flat eyes and a calculator behind them. He picked up the freeze order, scanned it, and stood up in one fluid motion. I am out, he said, buttoning his jacket. Liens. Court orders. Family disputes. This is toxic. Find another buyer. He grabbed his briefcase and walked out without looking back. The door closed behind him with a finality that echoed. Dylan watched him go. His last lifeline walking out of the room. $600,000 in cash vanishing through a glass door. He turned back to me. His face was a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. You cannot do this, he said. His voice was rising, losing control. That money was mine. That buyer was mine. I have people waiting for that cash. People who will what? I asked softly. Break your legs? Send someone to the house? I shook my head slowly. Those people sold your debt yesterday for 50 cents on the dollar. They were happy to be rid of you. You are not their problem anymore, Dylan. That is a lie. Tony would never call him, I said. Go ahead. Dylan grabbed his phone from the table with shaking hands. He dialed. Put it to his ear. I watched his face as it rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Voicemail. He dialed again. Voicemail. A 3rd time. Nothing. Tony sold your paper, son, Hank said. He was delighted. You were a dead file, a bad bet. And in that world, bad bets get written off. Dylan's phone slipped from his fingers. It hit the table with a crack and bounced once before settling face down. He stared at it, like it had betrayed him. Then he looked up at me. For the first time since I walked in, his eyes were not angry. They were not calculating. They were terrified. He was looking at me the way a man looks at an oncoming train when he realizes the tracks beneath his feet are not going to let him move. "What do you want?" he whispered. I leaned forward slightly. The cane across my lap caught the light. The brass ram's head gleamed. "I want you to sit down, Dylan. I want you to listen. Because I am not done. And what comes next is going to be much, much worse." His knees buckled. He sank into his chair like a man who had been shot and had not yet realized he was dead. His hands lay flat on the table in front of him, trembling. I looked at Hank. He checked his phone, nodded once, then typed a single word into a text message. The door opened again. Megan walked in carrying her laptop bag like a briefcase full of grenades. She was calm, unhurried. Her heels clicked on the hardwood with a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. She did not look at Dylan immediately. She walked to the table, set the bag down, and unzipped it with the precision of a surgeon preparing instruments. Dylan stared at her. I watched recognition flicker across his face. Then confusion. Then a new kind of fear. The kind that comes when a threat materializes from a direction you never thought to guard. "Hello, Dylan," Megan said. Her voice was even and professional. She opened the laptop and angled it toward the center of the table. "Remember me? Mom's other kid. The one you told Frank was nobody. The one you never bothered to invite to Christmas." Dylan's mouth worked. "Megan? What are you? Why are you here? This has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me." She tapped a key, and the screen filled with a spreadsheet. Rows of numbers, dates, account numbers, wire routing codes. Mom made it my business 5 years before she died. She asked me to watch, to document, to wait. Megan looked up from the screen and met Dylan's eyes. "I have been waiting a long time, Dylan." She turned the laptop so the screen faced him directly. 11 phantom construction projects. 3.4 million in fabricated invoices. Wire transfers routed through Cyprus, then the Caymans, then back into domestic accounts under shell company names. Every dollar tracked. Every transaction time-stamped. Every email archived. She clicked to another folder. Your communications with the Vladivostok Syndicate. Emails discussing terms. Texts about payment schedules. Photos of cash drops you were stupid enough to take on your own phone and back up to the cloud. Dylan was shaking his head, back and forth like a metronome. No. That is stolen. You hacked my accounts. That is inadmissible. That is illegal. None of this would hold up in— "I did not hack anything," Megan said. Her voice cut through his panic like a razor through paper. "Mom did this. She sat at your family dinners and smiled at you, and went home and logged into the shared family cloud that you never thought to restrict. She downloaded your backup files for 5 years, Dylan. She watched you steal and lie and cheat, and she documented every single step." Megan clicked one more time. A scanned document appeared. Dylan's handwriting. Frank Morrison's forged signature beneath it. A notary seal that had never been stamped by a real notary. "The deed transfer," Megan said. "The forgery that started all of this. Mom found the practice copies in your home office trash can 2 years before she died. She photographed them. She had a handwriting expert analyze them. She built the case you thought nobody would ever build." Dylan pushed back from the table. His chair rolled until it hit the window. He was cornered on 3 sides by mahogany and glass and truth. His eyes darted left, then right, then to the side door at the back of the conference room. The emergency exit. The door that led to the back hallway, the elevator, the parking garage, where his car waited with a packed bag and a passport in the trunk, he moved. Fast. Faster than I expected from a man who looked like he was about to collapse. He shoved his chair aside and lunged for the side door. His hand closed around the handle, and he yanked it open. Victor filled the doorway like a wall, arms crossed, feet planted wide. His face was blank. Professional. He looked down at Dylan the way a bouncer looks at a drunk who has wandered into the wrong hallway. "Victor!" Dylan's voice cracked into a high register. "The car. Now. We need to go. Start the car. Get me out of here." Victor did not move. He did not blink. "Victor! Did you hear me? Start the damn car. We are leaving." "Mr. Morrison paid what you owe me," Victor said. His voice was flat. Final. 3 months. $5,000. It was on my table before you even thought to ask where it went. Dylan's hand was still on the door handle. His knuckles were white. He stared at Victor as if staring hard enough could change reality. "We are done, Dylan," Victor said. He unfolded his arms and took one step forward. Dylan stumbled backward into the room. Victor pulled the door shut from the outside. The click of the latch was the sound of the last exit ceiling. Dylan spun around. He was breathing in short, shallow gasps. Sweat had soaked through the back of his shirt, and his hair was falling into his eyes. He looked from me to Hank to Megan, to the closed door and back again. A rat in a box with no holes. "This is extortion," he screamed. The sound bounced off the glass walls. "All of you. This is conspiracy. Blackmail. I will call the police. I will have every one of you arrested." Hank had not moved from his position at the table. He stood with one hand in his pocket, the other resting lightly on his briefcase. He looked at Dylan the way a cat looks at a mouse that has run out of room. "Please," Hank said. "Call them. I would be delighted to share what we have with law enforcement. In fact, I have something even better than the police." He pulled his phone from his pocket and held it up. "I have the FBI on speed dial. Agent Torres, Organized Crime Division. He has been building a case against your Russian friends for 18 months, and he is extremely interested in the domestic money laundering connection." Hank tilted his head slightly. "Shall I conference him in? He is standing by." 5 minutes away, actually. The color that remained in Dylan's face vanished. Gone. He went from gray to white, to something that was not quite a color at all. His legs seemed to lose their structure. He reached for the back of a chair to steady himself and missed, his hand grabbing empty air before finding the leather. He lowered himself into the chair, slowly, like a building settling before collapse. "What do you want?" The words came out as air, barely voiced, a whisper aimed at the table's surface. "What do you all want from me?" I looked at my son. Sweat on his forehead, shirt clinging to his back, hands trembling on the armrests. This was the man who had stood in my doorway 3 nights ago, wearing cashmere and arrogance. This was the man who called me dead weight, who threw my wife's memory at me in a garbage bag, who planned to lock me in a facility and wait for me to die. He was nothing now. A shell. A bluff called. I leaned forward. The cane lay across my lap, and my hands were still. My voice came out quiet and absolute. "Listen carefully, son, because I am only going to say this once." Hank closed the blinds. The fluorescent lights turned the private office into a box of white light with nowhere to hide. Documents on the glass table. Dylan on one side. Me on the other. 3 feet of polished glass and a lifetime of broken trust. 2 choices, I said. Only 2. No negotiation. Dylan looked at me with hollow eyes. A man who knew he was finished, but could not stop hoping. Option A. We hand everything to the FBI. Wire fraud. Forgery. Money laundering. The life insurance policy you took out. so you could profit from my death. 15 to 25 years federal. No plea. I let the number breathe. Dylan would be 65 when he got out. Option B. I slid the papers across. You sign. Right now. His hands shook so badly the pages rattled when he touched them. Full property transfer back to my name. Uncontested divorce from Heather. You waive all marital assets. A signed confession of the $2.2 million debt. And you leave Oregon permanently. No calls. No letters. No contact of any kind. Dylan stared at the papers. I could see his mind racing, searching for an angle. Then he looked up, and the mask came on. The last mask. The one he saved for, when everything else failed. His face softened. His eyes went wet. His shoulders curled inward, like a child caught stealing. Dad. His voice trembled with practiced precision. I am sick. The gambling is a disease. I was not in my right mind. I kept thinking one more bet would fix everything. He reached toward my hand. I am your son. Your blood. Remember the workshop? I was 8 years old holding nails for you. You called me your little apprentice. The words hit me like a fist. Because he was right. I remembered. The sawdust. His small fingers pulling 16s from the coffee can. The pride on his face when the shelf was done. For one terrible moment I wavered. The foundation cracked beneath my resolve. He was my boy. Whatever he became, he started as mine. I reached into my jacket, found Catherine's letter. The paper was soft from being folded too many times. I unfolded it on the table. Your mother wrote this 18 months before she died. She knew what you were. I read aloud. My voice filled the room. Do not feel guilty, Frankie. You are not punishing your son. You are saving the man I married. That man would never let a bully win. Love. Cat. I folded the letter. Put it back against my heart. She loved you. I loved you. But love does not mean I let you cage me in a facility and wait for me to die so you can cash a check. I let him see the pain in my eyes. I did not hide it. Sign the papers. His mask crumbled. The performance collapsed. He slumped like a puppet with cut strings. Then the door opened. Heather Mayan. My arn. My arn. My arm, my L. My wearing jeans and a wool coat. No fear on her face anymore. She opened it, and a ring slid into her palm. She set it on the glass table with a click. I had this appraised last week, she said. Her voice did not shake. The jeweler told me it was cubic zirconia. You sold my real ring and replaced it with glass while I slept. Dylan closed his eyes. I packed your bag. It is in the hallway. Everything you need to start over somewhere that is not here. She did not say goodbye. She turned and walked to Megan by the door. Megan put an arm around her shoulders and guided her out. The door closed softly. Dylan opened his eyes, looked at the fake ring on the table, the lie his wife had worn for years. He picked up the pen. He signed the property transfer, signed the divorce, signed the confession, signed the exile agreement. Each signature smaller than the last, as if he was shrinking with every stroke. When he finished, his hand dropped. The pen rolled away. I placed a white envelope in front of him. $4,000. Enough for a bus ticket and a month in a cheap room. I paused. That is considerably more than the $12 you left me with when you threw me into the rain. He picked up the envelope with fingers that had no strength. He stood. His expensive suit hung on him like it belonged to someone larger, someone who no longer existed. He turned toward the door, took one step, stopped. Do you hate me? His voice was small, a child's voice coming from a grown man's body. I looked at the back of his head, the hair I used to ruffle, the shoulders I used to carry him on when he was too tired to walk home from the park. I love you, Dylan. The words hurt coming out. They tasted like iron. I love you because you are my son, and nothing will change that. But love does not mean I let you destroy us. It does not mean I hand you my life so you can feed it into a machine. I took a breath. Go somewhere. Build something honest. Become someone your mother would have recognized. That is all I have left to give you. He did not turn around. He opened the door. Stepped through. It closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like the last word of a sentence that took 40 years to finish. I sat alone in the room. The cane across my lap. Catherine's letter against my chest. Signed papers on the table. The fake ring throwing tiny rainbows across the glass under the fluorescent light. It was done. My son was gone. I had won everything. And it felt like losing something I could never name. The conference room emptied slowly. Hank collected the signed documents into a leather portfolio. His movements precise and unhurried. The way a man handles something he knows will matter in court. Megan closed her laptop and slid it into her bag. The two ex-military security men, broad-shouldered, stone-faced, retreated to the hallway without a word. I sat at the glass table, staring at the 4 signatures Dylan had left behind. His handwriting had always been messy, even as a boy. Catherine used to joke that he wrote like a doctor who'd been startled. Now those jagged letters represented the end of something I wasn't sure I could name. Frank. Hank's voice was low, respectful. We should go. Torres will be here in 20 minutes for the copies. I nodded but didn't move. The cubic zirconia ring Heather had placed on the table caught the overhead light and threw a small rainbow across the documents. A fake diamond, creating real color. Catherine would have found poetry in that. Megan touched my shoulder. Dad, I mean, Frank. Are you okay? I looked up at her. She'd called me Dad. Just for a second. Just by accident. But it landed somewhere deep in my chest where I hadn't felt anything in 3 years. Catherine's other daughter. The one who kept her promise. I'm fine, I said. Let's walk. We left Miller and Associates at 10:47 a.m. The February air hit my face, and I welcomed it, not the brutal, punishing cold of Tuesday night, but something cleaner. The rain had stopped overnight, and Portland had that scrubbed quality it gets after a heavy storm. The brick sidewalks dark and shining. The trees along 10th Avenue dripping their last silver drops onto parked cars. Hank walked on my left. His father's hickory cane now back in my hand. Megan walked on my right, her heels clicking a steady rhythm on the wet pavement. We moved together down the block in silence. 3 people who had been strangers 5 days ago, and were now something else entirely. A bicycle courier swerved around us. A woman in a green coat walked a golden retriever. The world continued, as if nothing extraordinary had happened inside that conference room. As if a 73-year-old carpenter hadn't just dismantled his own son's criminal empire with a dead woman's evidence and a hollow piece of oak. Breakfast, Hank announced. There's a place on 11th that does proper eggs, Benedict. My treat. You just helped me recover a house worth $600,000, I said. I think I can buy eggs. He smiled, a rare thing from Hank Volkov. You can buy eggs next time. Today, you're still the man with $12. Megan laughed. The sound surprised all 3 of us, I think. It was bright and sudden, and it echoed off the brick facade of a bookstore we were passing. I realized I hadn't heard a woman laugh, genuinely laugh, since Catherine's last good summer 4 years ago, when we'd sat on the porch eating strawberries, and she'd told me about a cardinal that kept attacking its own reflection in the garage window. We found the restaurant a narrow place called Woodsman's Table, with exposed beams and a chalkboard menu. Hank ordered for the table. 3 eggs. Benedict. Sourdough toast. Black coffee. I didn't argue. My hands had stopped shaking for the first time since Tuesday night, and I wanted to keep them still. What happens now? Megan asked, wrapping both hands around her coffee mug. Hank pulled out his phone. Torres picks up the file. Copies at 11:15. FBI executes their warrant on the Cyprus accounts by end of business today. Dylan's confession accelerates the timeline. They won't need a grand jury for the initial charges. Arraignment within 30 days. Possibly sooner. In the house? I asked. Title reverts to you by Monday. I'll file the lien release this afternoon. You'll have clean title, no encumbrances, no mortgage. The house is yours, Frank. Same as the day you built it. I set my coffee down. Same as the day I built it, 40 years ago. Catherine and I had stood on that lot in Selwood with nothing but a set of plans I'd drawn on graph paper and a construction loan from a bank that no longer existed. I'd driven every nail, hung every door, laid every floorboard, and now it was mine again, not because I'd built it, but because a woman who'd been dead 3 years had seen the future clearly enough to prepare for it. There's something else, Megan said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope cream-colored, Catherine stationery. I was supposed to give you this after everything was resolved. Mom's instructions. I took it. My name on the front, in Catherine's careful cursive. The ink was blue, her fountain pen, the one I'd bought her for our 30th anniversary. I didn't open it. Not here, I said. Megan nodded. She understood. Some things belong to specific places. This letter belonged to the porch, to the rocking chair, to the sound of rain on the roof. Catherine and I had replaced together in 2014. It belonged to home. Our food arrived. I ate slowly, tasting everything. The hollandaise was rich and lemony. The sourdough had a proper crust. The coffee was dark and bitter and exactly right. These small things mattered now, in a way they hadn't mattered before Tuesday. When everything is taken from you, the return of ordinary pleasures feels like a miracle. Hank's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and set it face down on the table. Torres confirmed. They have the files. Dylan's passport has been flagged. He won't get far if he tries to leave the country. I thought about my son, somewhere on a highway with $4,000 in a packed bag. Heading east, maybe. Or south. Running from something he couldn't outrun because it lived inside him. I hope he finds something honest, I said. Hank said nothing. Megan reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Outside, Portland moved on in the pale winter light, and I sat between two people who had chosen me not by blood, but by promise, and I felt, for the first time in 3 years, like a man with a future. 6 months later, I finished the oak frame. I sat on the porch of my Selwood house on a Sunday morning in August, the Portland sun warm on my forearms, and I sanded the last edge with a folded square of 2x0 grit paper. The frame had started as a rough piece of lumber in a garbage bag, the same piece Catherine had hollowed out to hide a metal box, a brass key, and the beginning of everything that followed. Now it was smooth and golden, the grains swirling in patterns that looked like rivers seen from above. I'd cut a new back panel from a piece of maple, routed a channel for glass, and shaped the corners into gentle curves that Catherine would have called soft hands. She'd always said you could tell a carpenter's character by his corners. Sharp corners meant a man in a hurry. Soft corners meant a man who paid attention. I was trying to pay attention now. The frame held a photograph. Catherine and me, taken on this same porch in 2019, the last summer before her diagnosis. She was laughing at something I couldn't remember what, and her hand rested on my forearm exactly where the sun hit now. The photographer had been Megan, visiting from Seattle for the 4th of July. None of us had known what was coming. None of us except Catherine, who had already begun hiding money and collecting evidence and writing letters she wouldn't send for years. I set the frame on the porch railing and leaned back in the rocking chair. The street was quiet. Mr. Hendricks across the road was watering his lawn, and he raised a hand when he saw me looking. He'd apologized in April, stood on my porch with a pie his wife had baked, and said he was sorry he hadn't come outside that Tuesday night in February. I told him the truth, that I wouldn't have come outside either. Fear is a reasonable thing. I didn't hold it against him. Inside the house, I could hear Megan's voice on the phone. Something about a filing deadline. A client in Bend. who needed forensic work on a construction company's books. She'd moved to Portland in March, rented an apartment on Division Street, but she spent most weekends here. We'd built something careful and real between us. Not father-daughter exactly, but close. She called me Frank. Sometimes, when she was tired or distracted, she called me Dad. I never corrected her either way. Hank came by most Thursdays. We'd sit in the workshop, the one I'd rebuilt in the garage, new tools on pegboard, sawdust on the concrete floor, and he'd drink black coffee while I turned table legs on the lathe. He never talked much. He didn't need to. Some friendships are built in silence. The way a house is built one board at a time, without anyone explaining why. The workshop had become something more than a hobby. In May, I'd opened it to the neighborhood Tuesday and Thursday evenings, free instruction for anyone who wanted to learn. I taught dovetail joints and proper saw technique and how to read grain direction before making a cut. A retired teacher named Gloria brought her grandson. A young couple from the new apartments on Milwaukee Avenue came to build a bookshelf for their first baby's room. A teenager named Marcus, quiet and serious, showed up every session and never missed. I called it Catherine's Hands. Megan had designed a small sign, walnut, routed letters, oil finish, and I'd hung it above the garage door. The name felt right. Catherine had never been a carpenter, but she'd understood what building things meant. She'd understood that hands need purpose the way lungs need air. The trust money, what remained after the debt purchase, legal fees, and Hank's expenses, sat in a community fund that Megan administered. We gave small grants to trade programs, bought tools for high school shop classes that had lost their funding, sponsored apprenticeships at union halls. Catherine's money. Doing Catherine's work. Dylan's federal trial had concluded in June. Wire fraud, money laundering, mail fraud, elder abuse, 17 counts, 14 convictions. The judge sentenced him to 12 years. I didn't attend the sentencing. Megan offered to drive me, but I told her I'd already said everything I needed to say in that conference room. Hank told me Dylan had looked thin, his lawyer arguing for leniency based on gambling addiction. The judge hadn't been moved. I thought about my son most evenings when the workshop was closed and the house was quiet. Not with anger that had burned out by spring, replaced by something flatter and sadder. I thought about the boy who'd helped me install the porch railing when he was 9, holding the level with both hands, his tongue between his teeth in concentration. That boy existed somewhere inside the man in the federal facility in Sheridan. I didn't know if he'd ever come back. I didn't know if I'd recognize him if he did. Heather had moved to Boise. She sent a card at Easter, brief, polite, grateful. She was working at a veterinary clinic and had adopted a dog. I was glad for her. Some people escape and find themselves. I hoped she was one of them. I picked up the finished frame and held it at arm's length. The photograph of Catherine looked back at me through clean glass, her laugh frozen in a moment I couldn't return to but could finally hold without breaking. "Hey." Megan stepped onto the porch, phone in her back pocket, coffee in hand. She saw the frame. "Oh, Frank, it's beautiful." "Soft corners," I said. She sat in the chair beside mine, the one I'd built in April from reclaimed fir, and we looked out at the street together. The maple in the front yard was full and green, its shade covering half the lawn. Somewhere down the block, a child was laughing. I set the frame on the small table between us, next to Catherine's last letter, the one Megan had given me at breakfast that Friday morning, the one I'd read alone on this porch that Monday evening when the title was clear and the house was mine again. The letter had said only this: "Build something new, Frankie. Not for me. For the ones who come after. Love. Cat." I was building.